Okay, so we have our lovely little tray for our clay. We have our clay in our bag. We have a little cup of water over here. We have the lid to that, and we have toothpicks, a pencil, and our picture of ourselves. We want to work pretty quickly because we don't want the ink to dry on that paper. So to get your slab out, you're going to stick your hand all the way to the bottom of your bag, flip the slab so it's laying on top of your palm, and carefully peel the bag away. That gets flipped into the middle. You can smooth out any little areas that you need to smooth. You can get a little bit of water on your finger and just run it over the surface because we want to make sure your clay is wet, but not having any puddles to it. So I'm going to put it on like this. And then now I need to let it dry for a second. The nice part is this clay body is actually a very, very wet clay when we first start out with it. So if I were to put it on right now, my paper would peel apart. So I actually have to give this a second to actually absorb in. I'm gonna grab a paper towel because my hand's really wet. And I'm back. We're gonna fan this real quick. The trick is that you don't want any blobs of water sitting on the surface. You want it moist but not sticky or actually having pools of water on the surface. We're gonna take our picture. We are going to line it up best we can with the edges of our clay, and then you're just gonna kind of rub on the back of it for a second. Okay. You can now use your pencil. You should be using a dull pencil. We don't want to rip through the paper. And you're just going to give yourselves the outline of all of your faces. So all the important details of your faces. And these are not the final lines, so if you make mistakes here, just kind of ignore them and keep going. You can't erase, obviously, because you'd press down and push more into the clay, which is not what you want. I don't know if you can hear, but my cat has a new toy, and it's very crinkly. Something like that. Then you're going to get all the details of your eyes. Now remember, we don't want cartoony looking features, so you really do need to pay attention to what lines you actually see. And I know everyone's going to be really sad about this, but your noses are actually larger than what you would normally think. So you need to actually draw what you see for your nose. Okay. And I think, all right, you can see I'm actually starting to rip the paper over here, which means A, my slab was a little too wet. Oops. And then B, I'm pressing a little too hard with my with my pencil. We're going to very carefully, so we try not to rip the actual paper. If it rips, it's not the end of the world. Like so. And you can see I now have both the ink on my paper or on my clay surface as well as my nice little lines here. I can now go back in with my toothpick if I wanted to and add in more of the details of the hair, giving it those textures we talked about. We want to make this look realistic. So I'm going to rough up where the edges of my hair are, adding in some of those shadow areas. Do I have to do them all? No, of course not. That wouldn't look right either. But having more than none, less than too many is what we're going for. So you can see I'm just kind of adding in some of these lines. Just kind of roughing up where the edge of the hair is so we don't have too smooth of an object. Okay. I can even go back through and make these lines a little bit deeper if I wanted to. So I'm going over all those things that I just traced with my pencil, making sure I have nice crisp lines. I'm not stabbing through my clay, I'm just lightly dragging on the surface. And remember, like all of this ink, it's gonna burn off in the kiln. So if you're hoping that those ink lines are gonna help you show your picture, it won't. You're gonna need to redraw these. Okay, so fun fact, my camera battery died, so we are picking this up at a different time. I've got a little farther than what I think the previous part of this video showed. I finished adding all of the lines in my person. At this point, it might be the end of day one. We're gonna have a 2-day working process on this. So you have these plastic lids. You're gonna take the plastic lid and put it rounded side down, so not like you're putting it on top, but like upside down on top of your picture. And you're gonna put that back in your bag. That way none of these marks get smushed by the bag actually touching it. I'm just gonna keep going because I can. We're gonna take the next step is this background. You get to decide what you want in the background. So you're not doing the lines that you see in your background, you're making that up. You're adding things wherever you want. You wanna add a texture. So I'm gonna try a scaly texture. So I just have to keep repeating my texture all the way across the background. If you wanted to do multiple textures, you can do multiple textures. If you want to keep it simple and do one texture, do one texture. The trick is that you want to keep it everywhere that your face is not. And so at some point it should run into your face, and you should have like intersecting lines. You don't want it to just like stop weirdly. I know this is super fun watching me do this. You'll also notice you want to try to keep your toothpick straight up and down. You don't want it on an angle like you would normally have with a pencil, because you'll cut under the clay and it won't actually give you as clean a line. So you want to try as best you can. And then when it gets over here, we're just going to add a couple curvy lines. Ta-da! I have my texture in the background, my portrait in my foreground, and now I'm ready to do this patting down stuff. Now the water is not the part that actually does the smoothing. That's just to like reduce the friction on your fingers. It's your fingers that are going to smooth this all out. If you smush back and forth, you're going to destroy all your lines. So you want to get a little bit of water on your fingers. They should not be dripping. I can move my fingers around. I'm not spraying water places. And then I'm just going to pat down on the surface. And you can see the difference between the area that's patted down and the area that's not. This one has all these rough little bits. This one's not gonna cut me. We want it to not cut us. So a little bit of water on my fingers. Just pat it down ever so gently. Not rubbing. Again, do not destroy all of your lovely work by rubbing. You're gonna get very sad when I tell you to do it again. I'm going over the face as well. If you find that you do something and then all of a sudden you can't really see the lines anymore, just redraw the lines. You've still got the ink on there. It's still fine. I just scratched my forehead a little bit, but I fixed it, it's fine. The clay is still very moist and forgiving at this point. I also want you to try to clean up these edges around here a little bit. We don't want that part to cut us later either. And we're gonna flip our slab over and clean up the back side of this as well. We want everything nice and neat. We're gonna flip hands. We also need to add our name on the back. And now this one I don't worry about patting down because we're about to like put it down on a piece of paper and that'll help smooth it for us. So we're gonna flip that back right there. Any last little touch-ups you want to do, that's what you're working on now. And then this is ready to be left out of the bag to air dry before we put it in the kiln. And that is the whole of the self-portrait project.